Shen, a song of wheel terrace, composed for Grand Master Feng Changqing as he takes his army westward. Atop the walls of wheel terrace, a bugle in the night. North of the walls of wheel terrace, the Pleiades are setting. An urgent message arrived last night, coming through Chu Li. The Chanyu have reached the slope of Gold Mountain. From the watchtowers we look west, toward their dust in the darkness, and at the Han army already encamped north of Wheel Terrace. Our general hoists his flag and leads his army west. By dawn tomorrow, the whole army will be on the march. From every direction, the thunder of drums, the ocean of snow is roiled. 3 armies cheer as one, shaking the shadow mountains. Beyond the Tartar borders, our martial spirit rises to the clouds. On the battlefield, abandoned bones lie tangled in the grass. Harsh winds over Sword River fill the air with snow. At Shakou, frozen rocks threaten. Hooves are lost to frostbite. In service to the throne, our general welcomes any hardship. He swore an oath to pacify the borders. Who has not read the annals of former times? The glory you earn now surpasses all. Okay, so this poem by Shen is a continuation, or rather, I wouldn't say a continuation. It's on the same topic as the previous one we've just read yesterday, The Ballad of Running Horse Creek. Both poems are about the same topic and the same figure. This is an expedition that Grand Master Feng Changqing, a very successful Tang general, led to the west against the barbarians. In fact, he led a couple of expeditions, I think, the same year, one in the summer or autumn, and the other in winter, both successful. And I think Shen was part of his staff, of his army staff, so he was able to chronicle and homage the victorious general, we could say, in situ. So both poems have the same topic and they talk about the same situation, although this puts the focus in different images, if you will. Topic of the poem, of both poems, frontier poetry, that is, war at the frontiers, military campaigns, the landscape, the very alien, harsh landscape of the frontiers where the barbarians live. Bravery, although it's very subdued, as it usually is in Chinese war poems, and a praise of the victorious general. Okay, so let's, as we did before, check couplet by couplet the images and the meaning of that appear in this poem. And as I said, it's very similar to the previous poem. So we start with a couplet. Atop the walls of Wheel Terrace, a bugle in the night. North of the walls of Wheel Terrace, the Pleiades are setting. So the first image in this poem is a combination of the oral and of the visual. Wheel Terrace appeared in the previous poem. Now, in the previous poem, I assumed that Wheel Terrace, like the Running Horse Creek or the Gold Mountain, was a natural feature of the western regions. But from some notes that I've read, and based on another translation of this poem, it seems that it was a town, a fortress, probably a Chinese fortress or border town inside or very near the territory of the barbarians. So this makes more sense. So here we have this town in the frontier, quite ahead, or maybe it's not a Chinese city, but it's an allied city. And from the encampment of the Chinese, looking towards Wheel Terrace, we can at the same time hear a sound and see a sight. Now the sound is a bugle. A bugle is, I had to check it, I didn't know what it was. It's a small bronze trumpet, which is used for, for military signals. So the first sound, the first image of the poem is a call to arms, you could say. And north of the walls, so beyond Wheel Terrace, the stars in heaven are setting. Again, this is just an image of the setting stars. Elsewhere, in a note to another version of this poem, it is referenced that the Pleiades setting is interpreted or is a symbol of the future defeat of the barbarians, probably used in divination. So we start with this brooding, anticipatory atmosphere. The city is awake in the night, trumpets are sounding, the stars are setting. Second stanza. An urgent message arrived last night, coming through Chuli. The Chanyu have reached the slope of Gold Mountain. So probably from that city, from Wheel Terrace, which must have been an outpost controlling the barbarians. So a message has arrived. And probably the message is the barbarians are coming. The Chanyu have reached the slope of Gold Mountain. Gold Mountain already appeared in the previous poem as well, as a place of concentration for the barbarian armies. The Chanyu, now the Chanyu or Shanyu refers to the commander of to the ruler of the barbarians. Again, this is an anachronism. Shanyu was the title of the ruler of the Xiongnu, but the barbarian, which were barbarians at the time of the Han Dynasty, which was it ended more than 400 years before the Tang Dynasty, 300, 400 years. But as the Byzantines did, they preserved ancient names for modern barbarians. These barbarians that are being attacked here are probably Western Turks, but their leader is described as called by the old title of the Xiongnu leaders, the Chanyu, and the people are called like the Xiongnu, like the old barbarians. So anyway, the kings or king of the barbarians are concentrating in the Gold Mountain. War is about to begin. The next stanza will tell us what is the reaction to this information. From the watchtowers, we look west toward the dust and the darkness, and at the Han army already camped north of Wheel Terrace. So from the main camp, where the general and Shen lie, they look in the night westward, trying to see perhaps clouds of dust rising from the barbarian army on the move, trying to check if they're trying a night feint, a night attack. Also looking at the allied city, and in fact it's stated here that there is already a Chinese army there. Probably a scouting party, I imagine, or anyway, part of the army that is intended to defend Wheel Terrace. Next stanza, we start moving. Our general hoists his flag and leads his army west. By dawn tomorrow, the whole army will be on the march. So I'm not quite sure what happens here. Does the general start the march and then the army follows? Perhaps the general is so eager to advance that he leads an advance party even in the night. I would be inclined to this interpretation, but not based on what is said in this couplet, based on what was mentioned in the previous poem that stated that the general marched with the soldiers during the night. So the whole Chinese army gets moving. First of all, the general, with perhaps a hand-picked elite part of the army, and then the main corps. The next stanza will describe, or the next stanzas will describe the march. From every direction, the thunder of drums, the ocean of snow is roiled. Three armies cheer as one, shaking the shadow mountains. So this stanza shows us the power, the impressiveness of the Chinese army. Its drums are beating, it's an army on the march, and it creates an uproarious sound that echoes with the mountains in the background. In a very Ten Commandments image, we also get the army pushing aside the snow. This is autumn in the steppe. We imagine it was really cold and the land was covered by a thick mantle of snow, but the snow parts as did the waters in the Red Sea in front of Moses. Here the snow parts to let through the army of Feng Changqing. Beyond the Tartar borders, our martial spirit rises to the clouds. On the battlefield, abandoned bones lie tangled in the grass. So the army advances, and here it's described as a brave army. They have a very strong martial spirit that reaches to the clouds. So they're brave soldiers, and they're ready, they're willing for battle. On the battlefield, abandoned bones lie tangled in the grass. There is a contrast between these two images. One is an image of exultation, of the bravery of the soldiers advancing. The other is pretty depressing. It's about the battlefield with the dead bodies and the dead bones in the grass. Even though it's a conventional image that we've encountered already in other poems, unburied bodies are, a terrible, very dramatic image for the Chinese. The Chinese considered little fates worse than dying far from your home, not being buried in the family plot, in the family tomb, and receiving the adequate rituals. So lying in a foreign land is not a very happy perspective. So we get a contrast here. This is not a very epic or exalting couplet, because we get, the soldiers are brave, but they fought in the battlefield, or they are passing a battlefield, and they see the grim misery of war in the dead and buried bodies of the soldiers, of the present or of the past. So this is part of the hardships. Next couplet, again with the difficulties of the expedition. Harsh winds over Sword River fill the air with snow. At Shakou, frozen rocks threaten. Hooves are lost to frostbite. So the campaign is no walkover. Presumably there has been a battle with the barbarians. Perhaps that reference to the battlefield was a reference to the bravery of the martial spirit of the soldiers, referred some military clashes and battles that took place. The campaign goes on, and general winter, not only the barbarians, but the weather and the landscape itself is hostile to the Chinese. We also saw this in the previous poem. So the air is cutting, and snowy, deadly cold. And it's so cold that the hoofs of the horses literally get frozen and have to be cut off because of frostbite. But nevertheless, all these difficulties cannot halt the advance of the general and the success of the mission. And this is what the last stanza tells us. In service to the throne, our general welcomes any hardship. He swore an oath to pacify the borders. Our general is not going to be stopped by the cold, by the distance, by the harshness, by the martial spirit, which is not mentioned but might be presupposed, of the barbarians. He has to do his duty. He has to fulfill the oath he made to the emperor. So he is pushing on successfully. And the conclusion. Who has not read the annals of former times? The glory you earn now surpasses all. So the last couplet directs itself at the general, saying, we've read in the history books and the chronicles of great battles in the past against the Xiongnu, especially during the Han Dynasty. But now this exemplary bravery and ability that you have shown outshines all the examples on the past. This is, of course, a little bit hyperbolic, as is only to be expected in a poem praising your boss, in a poem praising the general in whose entourage you are working. But beyond the hyperbole, we might assume that it's a well-deserved praise for a general that has gone to the ends of the Chinese world and managed successfully to wage war against a difficult and tough adversary. So again, quite an interesting poem. This poem, the one before it and the one that we'll read tomorrow, they all form part of a triptych of frontier poetry that probably contributed to the fixation of Shen as a poet of war, a poem of the land, of the landscape of the frontiers, a frontier poet, again with others like Gao Shi, and up to a point Wang Changling. So these should be taken as exemplary poems of the whole type of frontier poetry that we will find in other poets in this anthology and in other books to come.